And we're back with another episode of Franchise My Business, the podcast for franchisors, hosted by franchisors. I'm your host, Kevin Oldham, and I'm excited because we're going to talk about a franchise in a space that I hadn't really thought about was a space that people would be franchising in. And then once I got introduced to it, I'm like, well, yeah, of course that's a space that people are franchising in. So this is going to be a really, really cool episode because we're going to talk about like IT. We're going to talk about process optimization, digital transformation, how to augment your staff, like all sorts of kind of complex issues that an organization has made pretty simple and then furthermore has offered that opportunity via franchise. So without further ado, I have co-founder of Valenta, which is a franchise system, on today. I've got Jayesh Kasim. He's going to help us help us through this process of understanding how IT can basically be packaged up, can be franchised, and can be offered throughout the entire world. And these guys are doing it globally. So without further ado, welcome Jayesh to the show.
Kevin, thanks very much for having me.
It's my pleasure. My pleasure. I want to go back to the very, very beginning of your story because the founder story is, I think, as an entrepreneur, it's like the coolest part. It's like, hey, somebody was doing something one day, and then all of a sudden they think, I'm going to go start a business. I'm going to go solve a problem. And I think there's a lot of people that never make the leap. They just never do it. They probably die wishing that they'd done it. And entrepreneurs actually do it. And the founder story, there can be a lot of strength and motivation in it. So when did you start your business and why?
Yeah, sure. So maybe I'll go back to the very start, right? So I was working as a project manager at Glencore, right, a mining company in Australia. And, it was at that time, while I enjoyed what I did, I lived in the outback. So there wasn't too much to do after work, right? And I wanted to do something by myself. And I purchased a franchise at that time, right? So this was a brick and mortar franchise in financial services, right? Where we were providing mortgages and insurances. So pretty much think about it as a bank franchise. So I had no experience in that space, but I did up my qualifications. And the reason I purchased a franchise is I didn't have a concept, right? But I knew I could execute really well. I felt very confident about that. So I started that franchise. And, over a period of, and I kept my day job as well for a period of about 9 months. And in that 9 months, I hit my replacement income, right? And then I made it up full time. I quit my job and I focused on the business full time. But one of the things I did at the very start was I spent a lot on marketing, right? So I hired resources and I was spending, this is going back slightly over 10 years ago, I was spending about $5,000 a month in marketing, right? To make an impact on the market. And it worked, right? And that's why I hit my replacement income in about 9 months. And from there, over the next 3 years, I ended up opening 3 franchises in 2 other cities. So I ended up with three units. And I quite enjoyed being a part of the franchise network itself, right? There's lots of benefits in having a system, having a support network. But it was at that time, I also realized that there was a lot of back office work that needed to be done, right? So while we were seeing customers, we had to do a lot of processing of all the applications. And it was then that I realized that I could set up a virtual team. So we set up a team in India to do a lot of our processing of paperwork and our documentation. And that worked really well, right? It made sure that we were able to turn things around a lot quicker, so our customers were happy, right? We were doing it a lot quicker than any of the banks in the local area were able to process applications, right? So that helped. And it was cost effective, which meant we could then hire more people locally to see customers, right? And we were also able to spend more in marketing. So that worked, and that also helped us, expand in opening the next 2 franchise locations as well. So as we did this, others within the franchise network, they were looking at us because we were winning all the national awards. They're like, okay, what's the success? What are you guys doing? and we told them about the back office system, and they wanted to start using that. We're like, okay, yeah, sure, no worries, And we started offering it to them. And then we sort of realized that what we were offering to others within the franchise network could become a business by itself. So it was at that time we decided to sell those 3 units and set up Valenta right, to take the Valenta services to the mid-market. So that's really how Valenta started, right? So that's the
Yeah.
background.
That's really cool. That's really cool. You kind of stumbled into it, and some of those best, if you're listening and you're thinking about, hey, like what is a great business to start? A lot of times, the great business to start is when you're solving your own problem.
100%.
Like that's it. It's like that's why my business exists. I was frustrated, and it's like, hey, like look around. I get that question a lot, maybe from younger people, people who want me to mentor them, be like, what's a great business to start? I'm like, whichever one solves a problem that you care about and that you feel like others will pay you to solve for them. Like that's really what it comes down to a lot of times. And those are the best businesses because you have a founder story that is genuine, and the business is founded from something that's super, super important. It's impactful. It's legacy. So then you start offering your solutions. You built this business, it sounds like, to franchise because you had exposure to that franchise model as a franchisee?
Actually, no. That wasn't the initial thought process. No. So what really happened is, we knew we had a good range of services that, other businesses could benefit, right? So we started taking it to market, right, in Australia. We landed our first few clients there and we started expanding. And, the first market we expanded to internationally was the UK. Then we entered the US, Canada, New Zealand, Europe, and so on. So for the first 5 years, we were securing clients ourselves in global markets. We expanded our service lines as well, right? We launched a consulting service 2 years into the business. And then a few years after, we launched digital transformation. And the service lines kept expanding based on where we saw a need in the market. However, once we, after the first 5 years, we were sort of reassessing our situation. We knew securing clients was not hard, right? We were able to do it ourselves easily by traveling, seeing clients, and securing them. But a lot of times we just did trade shows in new markets and we landed our first few clients. But it was at that point in time we realized, we needed to stay close to our clients. We needed to be on the ground, support them and become their strategic advisor. And we knew if we did that right, that's how we would be able to, add more value to our clients and make them a client for life. And that's when we sort of started thinking about how do we go about doing it. And there was really two parts that we thought about. One was, doing it for our private equity. That'd be one option, right? And the second one, considering the fact that I had been a franchisee myself and understood how a franchise system worked, is I thought, hey, we could create a unique franchise opportunity, right? And with that, we launched the franchise model. So yeah, that's how that piece came about.
So you looked at, hey, do we go get funding from a PE or do we just, and by the way, I've been at that decision point too. Now we went in a previous business I was involved in and went to go try to raise money. I think we were trying to raise like $25-30 million. And the capital markets told us we were too early, like with our concept. And so we then went back to the drawing board and we're like, well, we could franchise it. We're already franchising our sister company. Why not do that? And we went down that path, and now business is doing great. And so, I think there's a common thread here. It's like, hey, I can go get a bunch of capital, or I can go partner with others and leverage their, kind of their capital to expand the business. Now, what I love about your business is there's no brick and mortar.
100%.
It's a lean business for your ideal franchisee. It's like, oh, cool. Like you don't have to have a physical location. You can build one if you want one, if you need a place to go. But for the most part, you can operate it from your laptop.
Yeah, 100%. And, just going back to the previous point as well. So, when we were looking at these two options, the other piece that attracted us with a franchise was, a franchisee is going to have a vested interest in the business, right? So hiring people is one way of doing it, which is perfectly fine. But then you've got HR issues to deal with, no matter how good a person is, they're doing a job, right? Compared to, versus a business owner, right? So that was, that was a key differentiator as well. And you're right. Our model is unique in that, again, you don't have all those capital expenses, right? It really comes back to, we've had franchise partners, and me, myself, I travel a fair bit, but when I do travel, nothing stops, right? It's as long as you've got internet, you've got a laptop, you've got a mobile with you, you're all set.
I love it. Who's your, I see like when you go to your franchise opportunity website, you're like, hey, our franchisees are executives from these companies. And there are some pretty big companies listed where they've been either previously employed or, maybe this is how they got introduced into probably the IT space. Would you say that your ideal franchisee is somebody who's had that corporate kind of experience and then is kind of burnt out on that, or who's flying the Valenta flag in terms of franchisees?
Look, it's people that have that consultative sales experience, right? I think they're the ones who make it work, 100%, you know what I mean? That being said, we have people from diverse backgrounds, right? We have people with a consultative sales experience. For example, we have a doctor in the business as well, you know what I mean? But he quite understands, how our services could benefit medical professionals, the medical practices, right? And he's built a really good business just based off that experience, right? We have people with audit experience, that have joined us. So it's a mixed bag, but I think the common theme across is, they're really good communicators, they have good business acumen, and they really care about, their clients, right? Which is trying to understand the problem, their goals and objectives, and helping them get there using our services.
Yeah. That's beautiful. And your guys' ideal customer, kind of serving the middle market types of firms. I love the middle market. You've got capital to buy stuff. You're not like, you don't have those small business constraints, yet you're not this huge organization where it's hard to push projects through. What was attractive for you guys about approaching the middle market as the types of folks that you wanted to target in terms of serving?
Sure. So look, we've gone through a bit of an evolution, right? When we look at the first few customers, they were all enterprise customers, right? And we got quite lucky in that the sales cycle in those instances were quite short, right? However, typically they're very long sales cycles, right? 12 to 18 months.
Yeah.
And they're great accounts to have. And we do tell our franchise partners as well to spend 20% of the time going after the large accounts and spend 80% of the time on the mid-market, right? We do have small business clients as well, right? However, we do. We have clients, under the 10 million range as well, right? However, for us to be able to add real value, if we focus on the mid-market space, right, that's where we'll be able to help them get to, if they're ambitious and they want to scale up and become a large organization, that's really where we can add more value.
Yeah. Well, also, something that I just thought about is the decision-making process in the middle market's quicker as well. 100%. I've dealt with those, Fortune 500 companies, and there can be layers of bureaucracy where, like you said, the sales cycle can be 12 to 18 months, 24 months. You might have turnover from your key decision maker. Middle market, not to say that you completely get rid of those issues, but you're a little bit smaller organization. Typically, you're fewer degrees removed from the decision maker, and business moves a little bit quicker.
100%,
right?
100%, right? And there's more stability in the space as well, right? When you compare this with a small business, you could speak to them today, you could start tomorrow, but you could stop day after. You know what I mean? So there's stability issues in the smaller market.
That's awesome. And I saw that you guys also, you're doing more than just like digital transformation and consulting. So, staff augmentation can be like a huge conversation. As I look on your website, it's almost overwhelming the amount of resources that you can bring, like in terms of where you got paralegals, you got project management, database admin, C-level services. I mean, holy smokes, is there anything you guys don't offer when it comes? It's almost like you're kind of like a Swiss Army knife. Hey, if I have needs for my organization, I can kind of come to you, and you've got a wide variety of solutions.
Yeah, 100%, right? So when you think about the staffing, think it's a digital workforce, right? Now, once you have a good system and mechanism to run that, it doesn't matter what those positions are because they all follow the same process, you know what I mean? And that's what we've been able to build our capabilities around. And, while it initially started off as a pure offshore model where we were offering, services to clients in Australia from India, today that's completely changed where it is onshore, nearshore, and offshore. So for our clients in the US, we have people that deliver services from the US, from nearshore locations such as Colombia or Trinidad and offshore. And you've got to tap into, the right skill sets, right? And take advantage of that that's available globally, and then automatically you get the best productivity, and you've got a nice cost structure as well that will help you deploy funds for other activities or other engagements, right? Whether it is sales or marketing, or whether it is going down the digital transformation path, or whether it is getting all your standard operating procedures done in the business ready for scale. Several things that can be done if it's planned out well.
So speaking of planning, so you offer a lot of different solutions. You're on a lot of different continents and countries. You got a lot of employees. Have you, and you guys are in the IT space. So my big question for you is, to manage your system, are you guys using off-the-shelf software that you've customized? Have you customized, like built your own solutions to manage this franchise? Like, how do you manage what from the outside looking in looks like a lot of complexity?
Yeah.
It's a big business with a lot of moving parts. How do you keep everybody on the same page?
So look, we use a system called Zoho One, right? So Zoho, yeah, we do, right? But we also have our own team experts, right? In-house experts. So we've done a lot of customization to the product, right? So it's an off-the-shelf product, but we've customized it a lot to meet our business requirements. So we use that, as a CRM. We use it as a project management tool. We use it for customer surveys, for marketing, the whole range.
Yeah, and Zoho is an awesome suite of tools for listeners. If you haven't looked at it, Salesforce and all these guys get all the headlines. I think Zoho has always been seen as a little bit less sexy because their user interface wasn't as cool as maybe some of these other CRM solutions. But Zoho, what I love about Zoho is if you're an emerging franchisor or you're early, they even have some free plans all the way up to, hey, if you're managing a global workforce and franchisees, they have an enterprise solution and everything in between. So it's a great platform that you can grow into over time as you're going through your franchise journey. And today's guest has basically shown that, you can run a global organization on Zoho as well. Or you can just be the cookie maker who decides to go from one location to two.
Yeah, absolutely.
What do you think is like the most challenging thing in your business?
Oh, look, I think it's all about process. I think that's very important, right? So, the business needs to be process dependent rather than people dependent, right? So no matter what we do, whether it's a new service line, whether it's a new initiative, it really just comes back to first making sure that it's not people dependent, right? So I think and the second thing is also, with the staff, with the teams that you have as well, always making sure that they understand what's happening globally, because the more they understand, right, the more value they're able to add and the more ideas they're able to contribute to as well, right? So I think these are the two areas that we sort of pay a lot of attention to in the business.
Cool. What does it cost to invest and get started in a Valenta franchise? If somebody's listening and they're like, hey, this is really cool, and maybe I'm sick of actually, I have a guy that in mind that would be a great fit for this. Enterprise level, consultative IT sales for the past 15 years that I've known him. So let's say my friend's listening and he's like, man, this sounds like a really cool opportunity. What is the capital investment basically to get up and running as a Valenta franchisee?
Sure. So we've got two models, right? So the first one is for individuals, and for them it's $50,000, which is the franchise fee, and a $15,000 marketing startup fee, right? Now, with the marketing startup fee, we give them a lot of tools that they need, and it also includes digital marketing spend as well. The idea is this is designed to get them their first few clients, and from there, they can continue and keep expanding. And the second model is for businesses, right? So existing businesses where they already have clients, and the Valenta services can be easily introduced to them. So these businesses do not need that marketing spend, and therefore for them it's just the $50,000 fee.
Great. So I would consider that to be a pretty economical price to get into business. Very few businesses can tap into a full ecosystem and basically get a business in a box for $50,000. A lot of franchises you're going to have to build out and have capital investment and whatnot. So very attractive franchise opportunity from my perspective. This has been awesome. Like, I feel like we could have a complete episode on like every single thing that you guys do, right? But that's not what this show is about. This show is about helping people understand what types of opportunities are out there, get their mind thinking. If you could go back to kind of the beginning of your franchise journey and think about the most expensive mistake that you've made. Because I always like to say, when people buy a franchise, they're also paying for the mistakes that we've made so that they don't have to make that mistake. They're paying for our mistakes that we've made as the originators of the system. Like, what do you think is the most painful or expensive mistake or lesson that you've learned that your franchisees won't have to learn because you learned it on their behalf? Is there something that sticks out?
Yeah, sure. Look, it's been a fun journey, throughout the process. We've made some mistakes, we've learned from them as well, right? However, if I was to start this all over again, I think one of the first things I would do is invest in experienced resources straight up, right? Once you have that, what happens is they bring that expertise, where you're able to lay that foundation real strong right up front, right? Rather than building it as you go. So I think that would be the only change that I would make. Now, today we're in a situation where, we've already recognized that, and, we're building our leadership team with people that have really strong experience in the respective operational areas, right? But that's it. But, that being said, it's still been a great journey.
Yeah, and it's hard, right? When you're at the beginning, you don't know what's going to happen. And so it's like, hey, I kind of, you pay for what you can afford at that point in time mentally, which you think you can. Maybe you could afford more, but you're like, hey, I'm not quite sure if this is going to work. I just invest X here. Then you look back and you're like, man, I could have shortcut my process if I would have just got the right people on the bus. But you probably learned a lot in that process as well, and now you get to pass that knowledge on to your franchisees.
Yeah, 100%. And it's a tricky situation because to get talent at a certain level, you've got to be at a certain level as well. You know what I mean? So
right.
Even if you want them, you may not get them.
Right. The chicken and the egg. The chicken and the egg. Well, this has been awesome. If people want to learn more about you or your organization, like, what's the best place for them to go do that?
Look, our franchise website, which is valentafranchise.com, has got a lot of information about the franchise side of it, and valenta.io has a lot of information about our services. So I think, check out the franchise website, valentafranchise.com, and go from there.
Cool. And we'll drop those down in the show notes too, so if you're driving and this sounds interesting to you, please don't pull out your phone and start trying to find that. It's in the show notes. You'll be able to find it later. Jayesh, I deeply appreciate you spending some time with us today. I think that the business you guys have built, personally, I'm excited the fact that I got introduced to it. I think it's a really cool business. It definitely fills a need in the marketplace, so I wish you guys the best and keep doing amazing work.
Thanks a lot, Kevin. Really appreciate the kind words there, and good connecting with you as well. Thank you for having me.
Likewise. My pleasure, my pleasure. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope that you got as much as I got out of today's episode. And if you did, I just ask for two things. Chances are you probably know somebody who would benefit from this conversation that we had today. So feel free to go ahead and text a link to this episode right now. The other recommendation that I have is if you like what we're doing at this show, I would love it if you left a review. Until next time, I hope that you have a phenomenal week and be well.